My history with Young Guns starts way back in 1990, when the iconic cards first appeared as a subset. Notables from that year include Sergei Fedorov and Pavel Bure. Nearly 30 years later, I landed my first, the canvas incarnation of Elias Pettersson for 1819 Series 2. A year later, room had to be made on the mantle for Jack out of 1920 Series 1. Then Krill showed up in 2021 Series 2, and there were a lot of really cool, unexpected things that happened as a result of landing that one card. I was featured on the local CBS affiliate's nightly news.
Which is all good news for Wosika because his photo was chosen to be the very rookie card at the center of the conversation.
I got to talk cards and photography on an episode of Wild Amplified.
Continuing the conversation, too, of rookie cards, you landed a really, really special one, Kirill Kaprizov.
And even had the opportunity to do a segment for the Card Life TV show. Then this landed, cover of Beckett Hockey. Then, upon reading one of the 5 copies I bought, I see John Ibrix. John Ibrix? I know him! A few more pages in and there it is, a feature article on me, my work, and this show. I should have probably retired right then and there because I had just peaked. But there was no time for that because me and my friends at Absolute Sports Cards had a release party to run. As you can imagine, demand was high, so much so that we actually ran out of product. Not before my hockey kids were offered a discount, if they knew the password.
Last password, dude.
Wu-Tang forever.
All right, he's in the club. What's the password?
Wu-Tang forever. Wu-Tang forever.
What's the password?
Wu-Tang forever.
The rolling started.
Wu-Tang forever.
Then, my personal collection began to grow with each subsequent release. Next, Krill and I landed the cover of the Hockey News. Well, 1/32 of it anyway, which I totally joked about on Twitter while making it a new mission to make that cover all by myself someday. And then less than a month later, mission accomplished. Then, my photos of Krill started being used for lots of other things, like this banner, a puck, and a can koozie. The most adventurous part about all of this after freezing my Tookus off at the Winter Classic and then thawing it out in Vegas for the All-Star Game is I've gotten to photograph Krill in every uniform he's ever worn in his short but electric 2-year career in the NHL. Home darks, road whites, reverse retro, the Winter Classic sweater, and both versions of the Western Conference All-Star threads. It's not stalking if you're credentialed. I hope. I'm a freelance sports photographer, and it's my goal to see as many stadiums as I can on my never-ending quest to land my photos on trading cards. Along the way, we'll explore the sights, sounds, flavors, and of course the people of professional sports. My name is Nick Wosika, and I'm a photo addict with a sports problem. And this is The Card Show. Working in an empty arena was, for the most part, pretty weird. Getting around was super easy, but the piped-in crowd noise is something I'd never come close to getting used to. And the further along we got into the season, the more I missed the questions we all hear a million times. The questions like, you ever have a puck come through that hole? How many pictures do you take during a game? Do you work for? Insert your favorite NHL team here. And to tell you the truth, I really missed answering those questions and handing out packs of hockey cards to the kids. It was literally team staff, building operations, NHL officials, Nordy, and members of the media, one of which we'll meet in a minute. But first, informative tangent time. Three years ago, my son asked me if he wasn't good enough to play professional sports, if there were other things he could do to have a job in sports. It was pretty heady stuff for a then 9-year-old, but then it dawned on me. These kids have no idea that if they're not Connor McDavid, that they can have a life in sports. After explaining to him that he can play the games he loves well after time, tragedy, or talent at a competitive level are gone, I went on to list the many jobs one could have in sports, many of which he had never heard of or knew what they entailed. That conversation is one of the reasons this show exists. I've always told my kids I have 3 commands as their dad: to love them, to keep them safe, and to teach them stuff. The last one is the reason I want to showcase hardworking, talented people that have really cool jobs and let them share their stories. Just like the person you are about to meet. Now back to your irregularly scheduled YouTube video. You're about to meet Jessi Pierce. Wife, mother of 3, a writer for USA Hockey Magazine, the Minnesota Wild reporter for NHL.com, a bar-down beauty, the drinker of the bougiest coffee I've ever ordered, and one of the absolute hardest working people in sports you will ever meet.
It's so funny. It could be, to look back and look at 18-year-old Jessi. 18-year-old Jessi said she'd be working for the Minnesota Wild. I have been reminded that constantly from high school friends, people I met at college. They're like, you said you were going to do this and here you are. Like, how?
Let's try to find out.
My love for hockey started a little bit late. I think I was in 7th grade in middle school. I'm a Matamidi Zephyr Gozefs class of 06. And they made it to the coveted Minnesota State high school hockey tournament. So it was the first time I experienced the tournament at 7th grade. And I remember just being like, wow, this is fantastic. Ever since then, I completely immersed myself in the sport, first as a fan, and then my senior year of high school, I became the stats girl for our Zephyr hockey team, and that just continued my infatuation with the game.
Originally, Jessi wanted to be a teacher, but that all changed when she landed smack dab in the middle of the Hawkeye State.
Upon entering college, I decided, you know what? I could do sports for a career. I like to write, I liked media, I like to talk, so I quickly inhibited that as my major. I went to school for journalism at Iowa State.
While there, she worked for the college's club hockey team.
I was able to do play-by-play. I hosted a TV show. I did color commentary, press releases, a little bit of everything. I also wrote for our college daily newspaper, covering other sports outside of hockey, which I think made me a very well-rounded prospect coming out of school.
She ain't lying, because her first gig out of school was a doozy.
My first gig post-college was actually with USA Hockey Magazine. So I was fortunate to graduate and move out to Colorado Springs and intern there,
which afforded her a bevy of opportunities.
I was able to cover NHL hockey players for the very first time in my career, which was such a learning experience. There at USA Hockey, I also continued to grow, actually. I was the producer of a podcast for my editor at the time. We did video hits. We just kind of kept trying to keep up with the digital age. Mind you, this was still 2011, I want to say. So, things were still just starting to come about. But that was kind of my first taste at being able to really conform to different digital mediums and try different things to get your content out there.
Which is huge in any industry, but especially sports. And Jessi understands this better than anyone.
You know what? Content is king. That is just, there's no question about it. It's always been a huge thing, but now with so many different mediums and so many different platforms, people want to digest it in all of these different ways. So you have to be able to make yourself available on those, right? TikTok, I'm a 34-year-old mom. I probably shouldn't be on TikTok, but I am because I recognize that's where a segment of audience is, and that's where we're going to reach some people. And Twitter obviously is a big one, and they all have their different ways of reaching an audience. And so to be able to establish how to do that with each is great.
Sleepy damn, because when you're a Swiss Army knife of media skill sets, you gotta use them all.
Yeah, bar down beauties, because I never have enough on my plate. We are in year 2 now of that podcast. It's a weekly podcast.
One purchased microphone from Amazon.com, 2 years and over 125 episodes later, it's easy to see why the format works.
I think what makes us unique is not only our knowledge of the game of hockey and the ability to break down specifics and X's and O's, but just the ability to have a real conversation with some of these guests and have them kind of loosen up and talk about things not common. We got Dean Evson to really let down his guard, I felt, from having covered him for the past few years as a coach and a media member. Having him on the podcast, I saw a new side of him and a little bit lighter of a side to him.
Passion Project had certain professional benefits as well.
Because it's also continued to help give me confidence in even my knowledge of the sport, right? You always second guess yourself. And I don't know if that's a woman's thing or whatnot, but just having the podcast having the audience that we do, it's been really exciting. It seems to have taken really well.
No doubt about it. As for the answer to the question posed a few minutes ago about how she got to this point,
I worked my butt off, and that's the only way that you're ever going to kind of get after your dreams. If you want it, you can achieve it. You just have to really work your butt off for it.
preach, sister, preach.